So welcome to our session from textbook to homework, a collaborative journey in developing our Spanish OER projects with LibreTexts. And here we have Hugo, Sara, Alejandro, and myself, Cristina. And on the next slides, we'll see pictures also. So next, and so the presentation, and then the QR code. Presentation topics that will be going, we'll start with the meet the teams. Gaps in Spanish OER, Alejandro will go over that. Creating the materials, Hugo will do that part. Idea and accessibility, that will be Sarah, and I'll be finishing up with lessons learned. QR code. So meet the team. So that's me, Cristina. I teach Spanish at Chabot College. I'm also the OER CTC coordinator. We have Alejandro Lee. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself there?
Sure. Hi, thanks for coming. Alejandro Lee. I am a professor of Spanish at Santa Monica College. I teach all levels of Spanish and heritage Spanish.
Sarah?
Hi, folks. I'm Sarah Harmon. I have a number of roles at Kenyatta College, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am adjunct faculty for Spanish and linguistics. I typically teach the second-year course and occasionally some of the first-year courses. I'm also the OER and ZTC coordinator for Kenyatta College.
And Hugo.
Hello, everybody. I am Hugo Diaz Rodil. I teach Spanish both at American River College and at Sierra College.
Thank you. So we had two other members from previous projects. We have Professor Nancy Ballesteros Melendez, who teaches at College of the Canyons at Mount St. Mary's in LA. That was part of Entrada Libre and Tarea Libre. And Nicolas Grisosto, who got misspelled, who was our accessibility tech expert that supported us on Entrada Libre.
So it's my turn. So I'm going to talk about the gaps in the Spanish OER. As you well know, there are several. Sarah, would you like to go? Okay, there are several OERs in Spanish for first year and second year. Chévere is one of them. We also have Beginning Spanish, Libro Libre, which comes from Washington State, I believe. Naveguemos Juntos. Pluma is based on the ACTFL proficiency guidelines. And the University of Kansas has Accesso, which is the OER that we're currently using for Spanish 3 and 4 for second year. It's very rich, very useful for cultural readings, not so much for grammar, and that's why we created Entrada Libre. So what was missing was that there were no workbooks and the grammar manual that complements Accesso. So that's why we decided to create Entrada Libre to supplement Accesso. And then recently, we also wanted to create a homework ancillary for first year and second year Spanish. And that's where Tarea Libre is for first year and Tarea Libre 2 is the homework, the workbook for second year that we're currently working on. One of the reasons for not adopting OER was the lack of homework, the workbook, and then the second one was to find an accessible OER platform. Just because the material is OER does not necessarily mean that they are accessible. So it's something to keep in mind. So our first project, Entrada Libre, was from 2020, I believe. Yeah, 2019, 2020. And so we chose Accesso as our point of departure, as our guide to create more grammar explanations and exercises. We also tried to incorporate a few assignments for heritage speakers, especially on the OJO. There is a small section in which we add a few tips on, what happens with some spelling or some vocabulary that we notice with heritage speakers. So Entrada Libre goes very well with Acceso, and also Antología Abierta de Literatura Hispana for those of you who can afford to teach higher levels. And we received funding. Cristina applied for a grant from the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges OERI, Open Educational Resource Initiative. We decided to have an open license, and the license is that one that you see. And we also use LibreTexts for many reasons, but mainly it was because we had excellent technical support, and it was based in California, which brings a lot of advantages for those of us who work and teach in California. Another reason was that LibreTexts is very open to new ideas and feedback. So if you want a feature, they will try to work on. Entrada Libre Grammar Manual has 24 grammar topics, again, following Acceso, that is also almost found in intermediate advanced textbooks. We decided to create some readings that contain the grammar points. We also use H5P exercises. At that time, we didn't have access to other platforms such as Adapt. We only had H5P. And you understand that H5P is not necessarily accessible, so we could only use a few. The second project is Tarea Libre. Cristina again applied for funding from the same place, the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges OERI. And what she wanted to do was a homework for first year. It's licensed exactly as the Entrada Libre. And we used the California CID transfer model curriculum for first year Spanish. And again, we decided to use LibreTexts, particularly because by then we have access to Adapt and other new technologies. It was written in about less than a year. We had to review it, and it was officially launched May 5th, I think, last year. And the media was created by us, or it was openly licensed. Tarea Libre modules are divided in 40 modules, 7 modules per semester. And we aim to complete about 1,000 activities, but we finished with almost 1,400, I believe. And then each module has about 4 to 5 sections that deal with vocabulary and grammar. Each section has 5 pasos or steps, which are divided in levels of difficulty. So preliminar deals with the vocabulary, and then empecemos are easy exercises of recognition, and it goes all the way to avancemos, which is a little bit more difficult. And we thought about mixed classrooms, or classrooms in which some students might need more challenging exercises, or if we had heritage students. So that's why we decided to create several levels of difficulty. In addition to that, we also created 3 sections, comprehensive assessments on Hablemos, in which the students are going to record. Escuchemos, a listening comprehension, and Leamos is a reading section with a few H5P exercises. And finally, we're working on, as we speak, on the project number 3, Tarea Libre 2. This is for second year. We're using Acceso as the model to follow. Same thing, open license. We're using the California CID transfer model for second year. The funding this time came directly from LibreTexts and the California CTC acceleration grants. Again, we have excellent support from LibreTexts, particularly the new technologies. We're working on that, and we expect to finish this summer, and it should be ready by fall, so you will be able to use it in I guess, late August. And the media, again, is created by us or openly licensed. The modules are going to be very similar to Tarea Libre, for first year. This time we're going to have 8 modules, 4 modules per semester. Of course, you can choose more for each semester or less. We're going to write about 800 activities, and it follows exactly the same sections per module. Empecemos, continuemos, practiquemos, avancemos, and instead of the preliminar, we decided to create the todo un poco, in which it's a potpourri of spelling or vocabulary. That's why it's called the todo un poco. The same thing with the comprehensive assessments. We decided to keep hablemos, let's talk, escuchemos, the listening, and then the leamos, the reading section. And Cristina mentioned that she is going to update the Entrada Libre soon. So that's, lots of great news and lots of work coming up. I think it's Hugo.
Thank you, Alejandro. Number 3, creating materials. So there are many options for OER textbook collections and repositories. Here are some of the options: LibreTexts, OER Commons, Pressbooks, Open Textbook Library. So the question is, why LibreTexts and not any of the other OER textbook repositories, collections? Here we're going to see 6 reasons that are going to make you all embrace LibreTexts. So first, LibreTexts is quickly becoming a central repository for OER content. It's growing. There are more and more faculty using it, creating, adapting, adopting. So it's constantly growing. There are more resources every week available. Number 2, and this is something that Alejandro has already mentioned previously, innovative solutions. The LibreTexts team is in a constant quest to make improvements to fix issues, and they are also proactive. They find ways to make the content more accessible, nicer, and to integrate it into the different learning platforms. So that's another very good reason to choose LibreTexts. Next, easy access for California community colleges, including creating campus bookshelves. Now, number 4, easy integration into Canvas, which is something that we teachers want to have. An easy way to get those materials, those textbooks into our LMS, in this case, Canvas. All right, number 5, accessibility at the core. This is something that Alejandro has also mentioned. LibreTexts has a team that works on accessibility to make sure that all the content is accessible. So that's a good way for us also teachers to make sure that if we are using one textbook from LibreTexts, that textbook is accessible. The content is accessible. And last but not least, there are lots of supports. And by that, I mean technical support, for example. There are workshops, webinars, YouTube video channels, Discord channels. You can email tech to get help. There are also office hours that you can attend. So all those supports are in place. And normally that's one of the reasons some teachers have some concerns to move from publisher materials to OER. They say, well, what happens if I have a question, if I have a tech issue? Well, there are lots of supports available. All right, so now creating OER textbooks in LibreTexts. So here are some of the benefits of using LibreTexts. So you can use the textbooks on LibreTexts as it is. That means the way they are, you can just use them directly without having to do anything else. Another option is you can download them as PDF. That way the students can access those PDFs without having access to the internet without needing the access of the internet. And that's an important option for bookstores on the community colleges to have a print optional copies for students, just in case some students prefer the PDF printed version over the electronic one. Another reason, customize it by remixing the units using the workbench in LibreTexts. So you might adopt a textbook, but there might be units that either you are not going to cover in your course, or you want to modify them because you might have materials that are more relevant, more meaningful to your students, for example. So you have that option. You can remix, you can change things, you can add your own text, your own ideas. Two more, imported to the learning management system. As I said a moment ago, you can easily import the textbook into Canvas or Blackboard, and it will populate your Canvas course as modules. It will create modules automatically. All right, one more. We were talking about the print version. So the students the teachers can ask for printed versions, and the cost of those printed versions typically vary between $10, $20 plus $6 shipping. And from what I know, what my partners have told me, it's a nice printing version. So it looks, it's a very nice printing version. All right. All right, so now we know that we can adopt and adapt the textbooks. We can also create homework. So something that our students need, and something that some faculty also have mentioned as a concern for adopting OER, the homework. Is there homework available? You can create homework in Adapt. So you can see a screenshot on the left of an activity, an assignment, a multiple choice one that you can create. And you can also, the same way you can adapt a textbook, you can do the same with assignments. You can go to, for example, public courses. You can look for a public course, choose one, and then there is the list of assignments. You can either import the whole list, or you can import the ones that you need. Let's say if you're working on Spanish and you need reflexive verbs, you can choose one, and then you bring into your Adapt, and from there, you can also delete some of the activities within the assignment. You can make changes. You can rearrange the order, for example. And that's what we have in those 3 bullet points. You can adopt it from an alpha course, and that way you can also select if you want your course to be a beta course, which means that any change in the alpha course will be applied to your beta course. If you accept it, there will be a notification where you need to accept that change. You can remix the exercises. That's what I just mentioned. You can make changes. You cannot edit an activity that you haven't created, but you can reorganize them. You can delete it. You can change the points assigned to that activity. And finally, of course, you can create your own activities, assignments, and add them to your course. All right. So here we have Tarea Libre. When we started, we were using, and Alejandro has also mentioned this earlier, Libre Studio, and we were using H5P-based questions. For example, multiple choice, fill in the blanks. The reason, as Alejandro was mentioning, is accessibility. We could not use the 20-something options that they have available because of accessibility issues. We were also using audio recordings that we will import into Adapt. So at one point when Adapt was ready, was completed, we shifted from Libre Studio and H5P questions to Adapt, that's on the right of the screen, and we started creating all our assignments using native questions. And some of those native questions modalities are select choice, matching, vocabulary presentations, and readings. And this is something that Sarah Harmon will mention after me, but those, the same way that H5P presents some accessibility issues, the Adapt natives that that are here, they are accessible. And you can see, yeah, thank you. Perfect. I will pass my relay to Sarah.
Awesome. Thanks, Hugo. So as Hugo was mentioning, and even Alejandro touched on, accessibility has been a piece that has been really at the bedrock of these projects, as well as IDEA, which is an acronym some of you may know, especially if you are involved in the State Academic Senate for California Community College, their OER initiative. But really, it goes more than that. So the OERI in 2022 officially launched their IDEA framework. And IDEA is the acronym that they use. Some folks use DEIA, but it is inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism. They had been working on it for a couple of years. So when the team was working on Entrada Libre, this was already being worked on. And so they included those aspects into their grammar manual there. And then with the first Tarea Libre, we were required to follow the framework. And then even though our Tarea Libre 2 is not being funded by the OERI, we're still continuing that framework and the usage of that framework. It is tapping directly into culturally responsive pedagogy, as well as really pushing these conversations of what it means to be diverse, inclusive, equitable, and an anti-racist minded publication. So some examples of this is typically in most publisher texts, most of us know for the Spanish materials, the focus is pretty much Latin America and Spain, and that's about it. They completely forget about, for example, the Philippines and Equatorial Guinea, where Spanish is an official language in both countries. And significant population numbers of those two countries speak Spanish. We wanted to make sure that we included not just what would stereotypically show up when you look for images or readings about Spanish-speaking peoples. We wanted to make sure that we had African and Asian diaspora communities represented. We wanted to make sure that Indigenous communities were represented, as well as mixed ethnic groups as a whole. So you see there some examples of what we have included in Tarea Libre 1 and 2, as it were. But this has been, even in Entrada Libre, this was a focus on their work as well. We also wanted to make sure that gender identities and other identities were included. So LGBT plus communities, we wanted to make sure they had some representation as well. And how we show this representation is in a few ways. So of course, in the actual exercises, mixing different types of names and backgrounds, but we really wanted to showcase it primarily in the escuchemos and the leamos activities. Escuchemos, as you recall, is listening comprehension. They're videos that we have created using Powtoon, and the great creative aspect about Powtoon is that they have a slew of characters you can pull from. So we made sure to include people from various ethnic backgrounds, various gender identities. We wanted to make sure that we had people who were of various ages and people with varying accessibility needs. So for example, the Powtoon image that you see an African-American appearing woman. She is sitting in a wheelchair. You see an older European-American woman, and you see a Middle Eastern presenting male figure. And we have these combinations of folks all conversing with each other. On the right side that you see one of our Leamos readings, and in this case, this is a reading focusing on Isabela Springmull Tejada, who is a Guatemalan fashion designer. She incorporates indigenous patterns and colorings into her designs. And oh, by the way, she has Down syndrome. So you see these combinations of identities being presented and highlighted in various aspects of our projects. Touching on accessibility, we've mentioned that H5P, it sounds really great when you first learn about it. It's open source. That means that just about anybody can use H5P and create a varying types of activities. It sounds really great because they have about 35, I think, different types of activities. However, most of them are not accessible, and it's really a bummer. They have all these different things, but if you want to focus and plan using accessible methods, then realistically for H5P, you have multiple choice, true, false, and fill in the blank, which granted is helpful in certain areas, but is also kind of boring. There's not much variety that you can do there. There were also, as we have gone through each of these projects, differences of opinion about accessible options. We had one of our reviewers say that even the multiple choice and fill in the blank for H5P weren't as accessible as they could have been. It's harder to control H5P content across OER platforms. So if I create an H5P exercise, let's say in Libre Studio, and I want to bring it into my adapt course shell, I can't modify it, which then takes something that is open and takes the open aspect out of it. So that's kind of problematic. It's also harder to set up these alternative pathways. This is definitely an issue when you have a platform that isn't very accessible to start with. How do you create those alternative pathways or ally type assignments? There were issues and errors once you brought those H5P exercises into ADAPT. We also saw them in other arenas. And probably the one that nobody really knows much about until we bring it up, H5P is not an American based company. It is based in Norway, which follows, I believe, the EU standards for accessibility, but they are different than what the US standards are, which means even if you try to take all the steps that you want to, and you want, let's say, H5P to make some adjustments, they're not going to necessarily make those adjustments because to them, it's fully accessible as it follows the rules of their home territory. So those of us in the rest of the world, we're going to have problems, which is another reason that once LibreTexts said, hey, we are ready for people to start using ADAPT, we jumped on it really quickly. So if you use Tarea Libre, the first, I believe, 3 modules were exclusively H5P exercises. And then starting with module 4, we started moving almost entirely to ADAPT native questions. It made it so that we had less to think about with respect to accessibility. Again, LibreTexts as an entity, and then specifically with ADAPT, they wanted to make sure that as many, if not all, of their assessment types were accessible as widely as possible. So that means we suddenly got back matching questions and drop-down menus. In ADAPT, it's called select choice, but it's that same drop-down menu concept. They're creating more. In fact, if you play with ADAPT and you go into the nursing questions, they have even more options too. And typically, though, you do have to make sure that you're using Universal Design for Learning best practices when you write, using headings, appropriate levels of headings, and the whole 9 yards. But there are guides to help you with that. ADAPT also makes it very easy to create alternative pathways. Even though most of their assessment types are fully accessible, there are a couple that may need some extra help for certain students, and it's a lot easier to set up those ally pathways. It's amazingly simple to copy, clone, and modify activities in ADAPT. It was something that, in fact, as we were writing the first Tarea Libre, that was one of the things that really jumped out at us as a big positive, because it meant that we didn't have to write each individual question from scratch. We could actually clone one, which meant we could clone the tags. So you only had to do, let's say I was writing a series of assessment questions on preterite versus imperfect. I only had to write one using a certain type, set up the tags, set up all the author and everything, and then just keep cloning it and then modify it. And in that way, I didn't have to, from scratch, write 5 different activities, I could have one and then modify the copies or the clones, which was really great when we got stuck in writing all these activities. And of course, anybody can do the same thing with our activities. You can copy them or clone them and then modify them as you wish. The other big innovation, and huge shout out to the ADAPT team, it's led by Eric Keene, but there were others as well. The insertion of audio and video media, which of course as foreign language instructors, this is one of our huge needs. We need to be able to include those media in ways that are fully accessible, and they made it happen. So huge shout out to them. And just in general, every time that we came across an issue, not just like a bug, but something we really would like to see, we asked them, and they either created it or tried to figure out why it could not be done, and could we get an alternative or a workaround. So massive shout out to them. And I think, Christina, you're next.
Thank you, Sarah. So lessons learned. Well, yeah, I think that we should put my face next time on that one. After the first OER, I said, and Alejandro too, right? We said that we were never gonna do this again. And 2 years later, we were back doing Tarea Libre. And even after that, we said no more. And here we are again with our third project. So we have learned a few things from 3 projects. I think the most important part was having a great team, right? And I had the opportunity to have recruited some of my very good friends and colleagues. So good and bad. Good at working with, but it's also difficult, right? You know, they're your friends. You want to stay friends. You don't want them to hate you when you are coming after them with deadlines. And we were on a very short timeline. So Entrada Libre, we had 6 months, and actually we had 3 months of writing. And then we spent the second phase of fixing what we wrote because of accessibility issues. So I think some of my team members were ready to bail out, and because it was a painful period of trying to fix and do things that we had done. I'm being very organized, and I try, and those of you that know me, I love spreadsheets and keeping track of tracking things, and Google Docs, and collaborating in Google Doc, but at the same time tracking the progress and seeing where so you see that screenshot, it's actually from Tarea Libre, where we had all the activities, assignments, who did what, and we were able to track by percentages where we were. So right when I took this, you can see each of the chapters and the percentage of progress status at that point. We had regular meetings, so we're for Tarea Libre 2, we're meeting on Saturday mornings. That's how we spend our Saturday mornings on Zoom, going over the project. Outside support, and I think all, Alejandro, Hugo, and Sarah have said the same thing again and again. Without the support from LibreTexts and the OERI on our projects, we wouldn't have made it. And the fact that you could go back and ask for tweaks on programming, so we could have an recording option, which didn't exist until we showed up and said we want students to record their responses. So that's how Hablemos came out, right? So students now are able to follow the prompt, record, and you go in and give feedback, and those grades will show up in Canvas if you have done the LTI integration. So it's important to be inclusive. The content that is inclusive, it's not just what is normally offered. If you have used publisher material, you know that there are a lot of gaps. You think that what students are paying for, those hundreds of dollars of textbook, homework, they are not fully accessible. They're not as inclusive as they should. OER has given us the option, the freedom to add those components that were missing. So incorporating UDL and accessibility from the start, that has been at the core of all three projects. Thinking ahead with backwards design, and planning, and more planning. So I hope that this is our last project, because I don't think I could stand at a fourth project, but who knows? Maybe a little break and then we can come up with another project. It has been a very interesting journey in the last 5 years since I began working on OER, and a lot of learn lessons that you can see here from timeline. Time flies, like literally flies by. We all start with big dreams, and then we start cutting down and say, we'll do it next time and next time. Like I mentioned before, collaboration is key. You need to have great collaborators, very motivated, and at the center. Even when COVID hit, we all continue to work, and we stay friends. I think it was yes, right, Alejandro? Alejandro has been there from day one. So the technical difficulties, that's a challenge, and I think we have learned a lot, and excited to see the progress from where it was at the beginning and where we are. And adapt is the hottest thing right now with the homework. I think a lot could be done, a lot more type of assessments, and think about the freedom of you having a say on what should be there. You could never do that with a publisher. And then accessibility, and I'm not going to repeat all the things that my colleagues have mentioned, but it is a way for us to also, as writers, as content writers, as instructors, to know what it is, and to understand how how the content we write is starting from the instructions, the examples we give. There are a lot of things that we can do, not just to pass the accessibility checker, but also the way we write our materials. In terms of copyright, we discovered from our first project, it was best to avoid all issues that could come up from future use of materials. And for Entrada Libre, we were debating whether we should use those newspaper articles from El País, El Mundo, and all those sources. We would have to clear copyright with each of those entities. And then there is the issue of, who knows, one day that YouTube video or that article, poof, could disappear, and then your entire lesson, your entire material that you had created around that would just disappear, and then you'll be left hanging with a giant gap. So what we decided to do, so you saw the video on Powtoon, we decided to create it, because then we would own it. You could go and fix things, you could adapt, and gives you the freedom of always having a place to go and fixing it, fixing the caption, making sure that everything checks. So yes, next slide. Release dates. So we Entrada Libre, you can go and find the first version of Entrada Libre. We are gonna come up with a version 2, a 2.0, that would align with the current project, Tarea Libre 2. So the chapters will match, and then there were a few gaps in terms of content, so we're gonna fill those gaps. So it will be a more complete Entrada Libre, now with Tarea Libre, and you can use obviously Acceso. So basically you would have the textbook, you have the cultural component with Acceso, and then you have the homework with Tarea Libre 2. So second year will be kind of covered in that kind of package. Tarea Libre Uno that was released last year. So that has been imported and adopted by many of you and many colleges. So we are really excited. So we're hoping that Tarea Libre 2 would have that same reception. We are doing an unveiling or a preview session May 5th, 5 de Mayo. So you don't forget, at 9 a.m. We'll have an OERI webinar. We'll be giving you a quick preview of what it looks like. We'll work through the summer to get it all cleaned up, and you'll be able to use it by fall. Yes, so you can find the webinars done by the OERI. There's that list. You can do search. You can put Spanish and you can see all the Spanish ones. You can put LibreTexts and you can find all the LibreTexts as well. And LibreTexts also has their recorded workshops on their site. And if you have any questions, that's that. And then what do we have? The next slide. Acknowledgement. We want to thank everybody here, and Jennifer is here, so we thank you, Jennifer. But Delmar, who is the head of LibreTexts, and Eric, if you don't know Eric, Eric is behind Adapt, basically, and he was there from the beginning, testing little things here and there. And I was really, really happy when Adapt really came to be as what you see right now, and more to come. The ASCCC OERI, we have Michelle, Shagun, Kim actually was our accessibility reviewer for Tarea Libre, the first one. And those of you that are here too, that were part of the hackathon. I did announce we're gonna have a Spanish hackathon too, May 10th. If you wanna come back and do a hackathon. The hackathon was learning how to use Adapt, and the idea of cloning activities and making your own version of it. So doing that hackathon, we created, I think, 25, 30 activities. It was a lot of fun. Karen was there, right? You liked it?
Yeah, it was fun.
Ready for more? We could even do a French side, because we had a few French instructors.
Carrie was there, right?
Yeah.
Karen.
Karen was there too, and she was making French when I said it was a Spanish hackathon too. But I think playing with the actual tool, learning that is not difficult, I think it's key. So, and there it is, Jennifer. What do you think of our last slide? If you don't know, that's Delma's photo.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Well, any questions?
For the hackathon, are you thinking of doing the Frankenstein stuff or just straightforward cloning of native exercises?
We are leaving Frankenstein alone. We're not doing Frankenstein. I know you don't like Frankenstein anymore. No, with Tarea Libre 2, we have gone full core Adapt. No more H5P, no more Frankenstein. So you will never have that problem anymore of trying to find what the activity was in H5P and not able to edit. So that's the power of Adapt. Unfortunately, when we started with Tarea Libre 1, Adapt, we were in transition. So that's the reason why the first half was mostly H5P, and then we were transitioning to Adapt. Now that we see the full power of Adapt, Tarea Libre 2, we just said, we left it, and it is better. So you will like
I don't think they had as many features when you were starting. No. I remember now they do with like the nursing stuff.
Yeah. And there's huge potential of, it's not going to be like those H5P all crazy type of questions, but I think that the options of that nursing is testing on that platform there are a lot of options. I mean, if I could figure out how to use the case study, I would use it too. There are a lot of things in there. We need another session on the ones on that advanced group. But yeah, so if you're interested in creating activities or playing around with Adapt, come to our hackathon. It was a fun group. We did like a rotating thing where people had to go to different
breakout rooms.
Breakout rooms, gracias. Breakout rooms, and then you would learn how to do a set of activities, whether it was like escuchemos, so everybody in that, then you rotate to another group and you would do, you know, fill in the blanks and then and so on. So everybody did like a going around the circle of activities. And like I said, I think we came out with 25, 30 activities. So it was a good test. Sí, Alejandro?
Cristina, I think that there is a mistake if you go to the slides. The presentation is on May 3rd, Friday, not May 5th. May 5th was last year, right?
Oh, May
3rd
5th
Friday.
was, yes, you're right. Because May 5th,
I have
it's
written,
Sunday. I don't think anybody wants to come on a webinar on Sunday. Yes, it is May 3rd is the release for Tarea Libre 2, and then the hackathon is May 10th. Good catch.
I have written 9:30. Is it at 9 or 9:30 for May 3rd?
I have 9:30 too.
9:30.
9:30? Okay. Sorry, thanks.
No. So all that will be available on the OERI website. The registration is not available yet, so you will just go to the webinars, and if you do receive the newsletters, the monthly newsletters from the OERI, it will come up on the May newsletter. You need any experience using Adapt? No, that's the beauty of it, Rachel. You come to the hackathon. You will need an account. So when you register, you'll be asked to set up an account. Obviously, if you don't have an account, it won't be fun. I can tell you, it's more fun if you have an account. And then you come in, and if you can create activities in Canvas quizzes, you can definitely create activities in Adapt. Even easier, because you'll be cloning activities, and the only thing you'll be doing is going in and just changing the content inside. So this cloning thing has revolutionized it's like a factory to create, and everybody could have a different version of it. Right? I don't know, Karen, you were one of our first guinea pigs on this hackathon. What was your take on the hackathon?
I enjoyed it, but I mean, I was already playing around a little bit with Adapt, so maybe that helped. And I do a lot of quizzes on Canvas, so it was transferring over the skills. But yeah, it was fun because it's mostly like copy and paste, or like you clone and you just go in there and highlight something and change it.
So I'm gonna have you lead one of the breakout rooms this time. No, and it was a fun, I think, activity. So people that were maybe scared of the technology, on, oh, this seems scary, like, and the fact that in less than an hour we created all these activities, and we came up with a topic. I think we did the present indicative or something like that. So the idea was to create like a folder of activities around the topic. Maybe we'll do something similar. So Moodle rather than Canvas. Moodle. Okay. Jennifer, you're here. Do you know?
Use Moodle? That's a good question. I don't know.
That's
Sorry. I can certainly ask though.
I actually had a question. Your comment about H5P not being accessible. I was wondering if you could just explain a little bit more the ways in which it's not accessible. H5P is built into Moodle, which is what my college uses. The faculty would love to switch to Canvas, but administration has said no due to cost. Love that.
Really quickly,
most
oh, sorry. Yeah, there we go. Too much echo. Yeah, so quickly, what it comes down to is screen readers cannot read the material well. It is very difficult for most of those activities to be able to be keyable. It's not very accessible at all. And in fact, most of the, if I recall correctly, most of the assessment types are either fully inaccessible or like very inaccessible, like only a little bit is. It's not just like putting in alt text and it'll be fine. There's quite a few issues.